In this video, we're gonna cover why you need to move to the top of the food chain now. And I'm talking the very tippy top. You see, we're entering what's called the Great Wealth Transfer, where tons of baby boomers are retiring or just completely dying off. And over the next 20 years, all of that money between the businesses that they've built and the money that's going to exchange hands from where they currently are to their kids is going to be the biggest wealth transfer we have ever seen in history. Not to mention every single day, according to multiple news articles, every single day, 1,700 Americans become a millionaire. Now we're talking about net worth. I don't technically count a millionaire as $1 million in net worth. I count that as $1 million in income, but points aside, 1,700 people per day are achieving a 7-figure net worth in America. You've probably heard of the term, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it is becoming true. Back in the day, this is what the pyramid would look like, okay? Where it was a pretty even distribution of wealth. However, what's happening is the middle class is actually getting squeezed out of the entire market, okay? What's happening is more of the money is flowing up and up and up, and less of it is flowing down. And so if you take a look between the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class, here's a simple way to think about it, okay? You just want to look at their discretionary income. And we're going to talk about the 2 requirements for a successful market here in just a moment. But when you're picking your market, I always recommend that you go into the upper echelon, the affluent, because of this sole reason. Most of the lower class people, what ends up happening is they get assistance from the government. And so in your scenario, right, they aren't actually going to have that much money left over to spend on discretionary spending. They can have their basics and that's about it, right? There's nothing left over. Let's move to the middle class now. The middle class people, they have a little bit left over for discretionary spending. They're able to meet their needs, their basic requirements, and after that, they have a little bit left that they're able to spend. Typically, you know, sometimes they'll use it through credit, sometimes they won't, what have you. But let's say that of their overall expenditures, 10% is able to go to the fun things in life, right? And then finally, you have the affluent. Instead of only 10% being able to go to their discretionary spending, they may have something closer to 40 to 50% ability that they can put towards discretionary spending, not including what they have allowed through credit limits and stuff like that, that they can leverage to be able to buy more of these things. So at the end of the day, if they're each looking at a $5,000 purchase, the affluent is going to have a much easier time handing that money over to begin with, as opposed to the middle class person who's looking at only 10% of their entire income being able to use on discretionary spending. Now, when we're looking at the types of markets to serve, okay, there are 2 requirements for a successful market. The first one is that they need to have a willingness to buy. Okay, they need to have a willingness to buy. And the second thing is that they need the ability to buy. They have to have the actual means to have what you want, because it doesn't matter how bad that kid wants the video game, right? If he doesn't have the money for it, you're going to spend a whole lot of marketing dollars advertising to that kid who can't actually pull out a credit card and buy it. On the flip side, if you're taking that exact same video game and you're marketing it to a grandma who doesn't even play video games to begin with, then that's also spending marketing dollars down a black hole because they don't have the willingness, right? Sure, the grandma might have the means, they might have the ability to buy, but it's not something that they would actually buy. So with that being said, let me paint you a picture of if you were to sell a $9,800 tax plan. We have 2 different types of businesses. We have a $250K a year business with 20% profit that gives them $50K. $9,800 out of $50K is a big chunk. It's roughly 20% of that profit. the tax savings are going to be pretty limited, and it's going to be much harder for you to justify that ROI. Now let's take that exact same $9,800 tax plan and let's take it to a business doing $2 million a year. If they have a 20% profit, that's going to be $400,000 as opposed to that $50K. The $9,800 out of $400K is a little tiny chunk. In fact, it's only 2.4%. The tax savings not only are going to be substantial, but the same tax plan is going to be much easier to justify that ROI. So if you haven't yet, it's the same work in both scenarios, but one scenario is going to the top of the market, that affluent demographic that has that discretionary spending, the ability to leverage credit. It's the same sale in each scenario, but vastly different outcomes. So if you have not yet, you need to move to the top of the pyramid right now. And my last point here, okay, is that as inflation continues to creep up and up and up, the middle is going to get squeezed out, because we talked about how right now they might only have 10% of their available income that they can spend on discretionary spending. But as inflation starts to creep up, as taxes start to increase, you're going to see that discretionary spending get squeezed out, where you won't with the people at the top of the pyramid. And the bottom of the pyramid, the middle class is going to become a part of, simply because they won't have any discretionary spending left over. So if you have not, I highly urge to get to high waters, get to the affluent client, and in the next video, we're going to talk about the major differences between selling to mass market versus selling to the affluent. I'll see you in the next video.